since I've written my book, different people who've read it have sent me photographs of their shoe collection.
Right.
Yeah, or different shoes that they have, or told me stories about different shoes and why they bought them. And so it's opened up so much in terms of stories that people tell. It's been such a lovely segue into so many different conversations that people are
Yes.
prepared to have about themselves, which are about themselves, but about their shoes.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, great to join you.
Yeah, really looking forward to this chat. So we're going to dive straight in, Lucy, with the first question, which is, what's important to you?
This question I've been pondering all morning, and it's funny because, when a question hits you like that and you go, I actually haven't a clue. So that was where I started with this morning. And it's funny because it depends on where I'm looking. The most important place for me to look is in my own home and in my family. And what's important to me there are my 3 sons and my husband and the well-being of people within my family. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah,
How we are together, how we function together, how we look after each other. That's, I think, the most important thing to me.
absolutely. Love it. And it's a really interesting one because it's what's really interesting about that answer is it's been, I'd say, a few conversations since someone's come back to me and shared sort of that initial sort of family as the most
Yeah.
important thing. So I'd love to know then, um, the little bit below that surface in a sense of the family. What is it about the sort of family dynamic for yourself that's so important?
I think for me, I lost my own mum when I was very young. I was 6 when my mum passed away.
Gosh,
And I hadn't actually pictured myself as a mother.
right.
It wasn't something that I thought would be part of my life. So when
Interesting.
my oldest son decided he was coming along, it was like, oh no, like what? I don't have no idea how to do this. So I
Interesting.
think the funny thing about that was that it gave me a clean slate in that I could have a go at doing this in the best way that I knew how. Um,
Yes.
but it, but there wasn't a kind of prescribed way of doing it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So I think that is what kind of brought me into motherhood was the shock of him coming along first of all, and then the looking to embrace what it would bring.
Yeah.
So and I love being a mum. I
Yeah.
absolutely, they are the center of my world.
Yeah.
And it's funny now because they're all in their 20s. And the biggest task now as a parent is getting out of their way and staying
Sure.
out of their way so they get to be the best people they can be making their own choices.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. That's
so
that's that's a fabulous answer. Thanks for sharing that because it's a really interesting answer as well because it's that one the perspective that it was not necessarily something that you had
mm,
envisioned for yourself, and then almost then I'm sure after the initial sort of panic
yeah,
that maybe you had to kind of look at it as as you say, that sort of clean slate, blank
mm,
surface, do it in the best way possible that you could figure it out for
yeah,
yourself. Um, because I'm sure with anyone who going into parenthood, that's everyone's facing into that sort of, as much as
mm,
people would be doing it forever and a day, it's
yeah,
when you're in it yourself, I'm sure it's very, very different.
yeah, yeah, it was. And I remember saying to my husband, no matter what we do, no matter what we do here, we're going to get things wrong.
Yeah.
So how are we going to manage that? And then I said to him, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll apologize if we get anything wrong rather than trying to defend it. So
Hmm.
it was, and that kind of gave me a sense of ease that
Mm.
it kind of gave us permission to try to do our best, but
Yeah.
actually to then have a default position of saying, "Well, we're sorry," we
Yeah.
were really only having a go, which is I think what we all step into when we're stepping into being parents because it's brand new people that we're dealing with and a
Sure.
brand new role for us. So
Yeah. Yeah. But is it, that's also like if we think from a wider context, that sort of idea of like it's a wonderful almost philosophy for life as well, in the sense of to
yeah,
apologize versus then to defend, to kind of
yeah,
try and just because that defending is say becomes defensive and
Yeah.
not wanting to. So I suppose of embracing the sort of thing, as you say, we're going to get things wrong. Things are going to go wrong,
Yeah.
and it's part of it, and it's definitely
Yeah.
part of the wider thing that we all go through, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And I think you can talk to what the intention was. The intention was, the end result may not have been what we wanted it to be, but when we stepped into this, we stepped in with good intention. So, and again, I
Yeah.
think that does kind of spread across your life. It's not across my life,
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
as a parent.
Sure, absolutely. I'm interested as well, as you said now that obviously your sons are all into that sort of into their 20s. You say that, so they're into very much a different phase of their lives.
Yeah.
It's a different phase in your parenting life with them as well, and that's, so you said it yourself, the whole thing of being able to step back and step away and let them kind of do those things themselves, make the mistakes, get things wrong, figure it out, and that. What's that transition like been for you?
It's been fun, really.
Yeah.
When they come and say, like, my oldest son is on the autistic spectrum, and he came to me and said he wanted to go to Berlin for 10 days, which I nearly needed a lie down with the idea of. but and I thought, I could actually be forceful here and say no. But what would I actually be taking away from him? Which is the opportunity to travel, the opportunity to explore new things, to learn new things about himself. And that was when I said to him, I'm panicking here. So owned my own kind of panic and worry in it all. And then say, how do we look at mitigating any risks that we can see in this? And then we got to work together on how we created the best space we could. Now, you're never going to preempt everything.
Yep.
But also him being away from home for 10 days, which was huge, but it was great. It was a fabulous thing for him. It was wonderful that he got to do all that. And I'm so glad I didn't stand in his way. Yeah. So I think that for me was just thinking about how you can stand in their way sometimes when we're trying to protect.
Sure.
But yet we can be creating trouble of another sort, and a frustration and pushing our kids away when we stand in their way.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I'm sure it's like such a challenging thing to do. So I'm not a parent myself, but I've got nieces and nephews. And so I'm seeing it from a different perspective in some regards, very much so. But it is that, as you say, because you yourself, you have your own life experience, you're trying to, and so you're reflecting on the times that maybe you've done things, and you could, because you've got that more experience, you're potentially seeing more of the things that can go wrong, and you're sort of trying to preempt those things. And but it's in some ways, I like the way you say you came up with a plan to mitigate, but still enable. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's still that thing of, if we sanitize everything, then there's part of the experience is lost.
Exactly. But I think about that, when I think about going to, a carnival when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When I went to a carnival when I was a kid, all I saw was the fun. All I saw was the potential fun on each of the rides, on the carousels, on the waltzers, on all of those different things. I go now as an adult, and I see the rusty bits on the back. And then I see that could put your neck out, that bit. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I think about that, when you look at things with an adult perspective, and then from the perspective of a young person, which is they see the fun and the joy, and I see all the risks.
Sure.
So I think we can create anxiety in people when we come up with all of the risks, because we'd never do anything, because we'd never go out in the car, we'd never take a walk up the road, because if you were to look at all the potential awful things that could happen, we'd never go anywhere or do anything. So it's how you balance that out and find the joy in it. So I think they help me find the joy in things, and then I can help them mitigate some of the risks. So it's a working together piece.
Yeah, absolutely. No, love it. So I'm interested now in a sense of the, with that's your family dynamic, and that's,
Mm,
obviously the most important thing. Taking it out one step in a sense of what you do professionally,
yeah.
because does has what you've learned professionally in the space of coaching, has that and helped you with the family, or is it very
Yeah.
separate?
No, I think all of these things are a great big mixing pot of life,
Yeah.
really. I worked in residential care with young people in the care system for a long time, nearly
Okay.
30 years.
Wow.
And then I had to retire from that, but I had to medically retire after an injury. But I think there I learned a lot about young people and how
Mm,
young people, their voice is so important to be heard in a room, and how we have to create space for voices to be heard, because we all have, like you were saying it earlier about, we have wisdom as we grow older, but also if we only think that wisdom is in older people,
yeah.
we lose the fact that there is a huge wisdom in the young people that we're talking to as well. So if
100%.
we can gather that wisdom together to make decisions about what's the best thing to do, and have conversations, like real proper conversation, real dialogue, not a kind of a professional monologue in my work, or kind of a monologue as a parent,
Mm.
then that imposes and actually stops conversation. So it's how we open up those conversations to a good dialogue, to learn from each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's from what you're saying, yeah, it's having that element of, is it humanity and a curiosity?
Yeah, well, my sons call me the nosiest woman in Ireland. So,
That's a different. I was slightly more diplomatic.
but yes, I like to say curious, and
Love it.
curiosity is something that I think is so important, because
Yeah,
when we're curious about each other, it means we're not making wide sweeping judgments on each other.
yeah.
When we see somebody who's not in a good space, we don't assume they're a bad person. I would
Hmm.
wonder what's happening in that person's life, that that's the best they can be right now.
Hmm. Absolutely. So tell me, there must have been so much from that 30-year career. You said it was in residential care.
Yeah,
So tell me more in a sense of about that whole your not to sort of digest the whole 30-year
yeah.
career, but tell me in a sense of more about it, because it's to excuse my ignorance of what it actually entails.
Yeah, well, I suppose I worked initially as a social care worker, and then as a social care manager. So, as a social care worker, my primary task was looking after the young people within the residential centre on a day to day basis. Then, as a social care manager, it was looking after the team who were looking after the
Yeah.
young people within the team. So
Yeah.
it was how we actually formed good working, learning, knowing, growing relationships,
Mm.
and all seeking to learn from each other
Yeah.
within the team. And I think that was a huge learning piece for me. I loved the
Mm.
work. I loved what I did. I learned the importance of being a good adult in young people's lives, even if that's for a very short space of time. You can scaffold young people. You can offer them something that can scaffold them while they build something. And I
Mm.
think that's something that's very important to me, that we look at how we step into other people's lives, that it's a scaffolding piece. They're the people that are building. We're a temporary piece and a temporary structure
Mm.
in people's lives. We're transient in the
Yeah.
lives of people that we work with. They are the ones who are doing the building and the growing and the learning, and we just get the privilege of being there with them for part of that. So I
Mm.
think that's one of the things that I very much learned within
Mm.
that working system.
Hi, James here. If you've been watching and thinking, I would like to make a change, but not sure where to start, that's where I can help. My 12-week coaching program will enable you to reconnect with what matters most and move forward with clarity and confidence. If that sounds like you, head over to jamesdeancoach.com. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah. So so as much as we'll move it more into what you're doing now, but there's always that element, would I say, for yourself there where you've had that in you to, because I don't think it's support. Help isn't the right word. Is it more support and enable to, as you said, to be the scaffold? They're the ones who are doing the work, the development, the growth. You're there to support them in that practice.
Yeah, just to be there alongside them.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I learned from that as well, it's about sometimes as professionals we can talk in jargon and jargon that we're familiar with, but we really need to break down anything that we're talking about to make it digestible and understandable to people that we're with and working with. And I learned that, again, very much within residential centres, that we had to actually explain to young people what it is that we were talking about in a language that they could understand.
Yeah.
And often that some of what they would talk about would become part of the language then as well. So they taught me as much as I taught them. Sure. When I would explain something and they would then try and explain what they understood back to me. It helped me understand that as well. So it was a whole mutual learning piece.
Yeah. And again, to excuse my ignorance again, in the sense of residential sort of care with young people, is the specificities of why they'd be in residential care, and is it, are they there for a time and you're trying to, is it moving through a system, or is it they there for a long term?
It would be different for different kids. Different kids would have different needs, and I would have worked in different centres, some with more high needs than others, some where kids would have been in for short spells of time, or kids would have been moving into foster care placements.
Yeah.
Or, so there were different needs for different kids, and I think just to be aware of what those different needs for the different kids were as well.
Yeah, yeah. So what was then, I'm interested when people move from one sort of career to another. So what was then, because you're now in the coaching space, so how did you transition? You said you had to retire from the other role. What then drew you to coaching?
Well, what drew me to coaching, I was trained in family therapy, which I love as a profession as well. But what I like about coaching is that coaching is about being alongside people, in forward facing, looking at, well, actually, what is all the wisdom I have gathered to date? And this is the people I'm working with. What is the wisdom that people have got to date that they can then look to make decisions about where they want to go in their lives? So I like that forward facing piece of it, where people get to make choices about what it is that they want, and I can help them figure that out. So again, it's a scaffolding piece. Really. Again, it's about scaffolding people to walk alongside them in conversations where they figure stuff out. Yeah.
And so what was your first, how did it first come into your sort of circle, coaching? Where was it the sort of initial thoughts of it came from?
Well, it had been around for a while in that I'd come across it in work, and I'd liked the idea of how coaching approaches things. I'd done lots of reading about, the approach that coaching takes to helping people and to working with people, and it was something that I really liked. I really liked the idea that people were creative, resourceful, and whole, and that was how I stepped into their lives. They were already that. So it wasn't about fixing people who were broken. It was actually about garnering people's wisdom and helping them to understand their own wisdom and figure out what it is that they wanted to do.
And I'm interested because I think we went through a similar, the same coaching school. I'm always interested in people who went through any sort of qualifying or training to become a coach. What was the impact, barring getting qualified? What did you think was the impact on yourself going through the process?
Well, I think it gave me some of the professional aspects of the role. It gave me good guidance in terms of how to be, and it stopped and helped me question myself, why I was in the role, why I wanted to do it, what it was that I brought about in that. It also, we had to do a review of ourselves, And that was, and I remember getting all the different, we had to send out a survey to a number of different people, and then all this information came back in. And it was funny because I was like, oh my God, do people actually think this about me? And you know, when you sometimes think you move around, and like I would be quite, I, I'd be quite a shy person. I'm not somebody who likes to put myself out there a huge amount. I don't really like being the center of attention and things. So to actually be seen in that way and to actually have it fed back to me in writing was something that really made me stop and think about how seen I was, and then how I would need to be, and how it's so important to be mindful of who you are. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because again, I went through that very same process, and it's yeah, that sort of adage of you never know who's watching,
Yeah,
and you're never necessarily sure of what they're seeing or what they're watching, because it's all
yeah,
down to individuals' perspective and perception as well versus self-perception.
yeah,
And it's definitely, I think for me, I'd echo in a sense of like the heightened sense of self-awareness that it brought
mm,
to me, in the sense of yeah, because you're realizing what people are noticing,
yeah,
you know, and it was as much as some of the things you kind of go that kind of certain things confirmed, and then
mm,
there were certain things you're like, well, Jesus, I didn't even
yeah,
know that was even a thing.
mm, yeah.
That's always, I think, quite a surprising. And how did you initially, when you so you get all this information, and then for anyone who's listening or watching, the group that it was a positive success group, was where we
Mm,
both did our training at different years, I think. um, you have to then do the talk. You have to do is sort of speak it out and present about yourself, which is again
yeah,
another unusual situation. How did you find that piece? Because you get all this information back, and then sort of then reaffirming and stepping into the person that people are seeing.
yeah. Um, it was to actually take ownership of it and
Mm,
take ownership of how you're seen is a really big piece in terms of self-learning. And I think I have a quote that's right in front of
mm,
me, that always reminds me of it. And it's, intention is how we measure ourselves, but behavior is how we're measured by others.
lovely.
And I think
Yeah.
that's so important. And I think about that as, you know, the person that you intended to ring. You
Yes.
have them in your mind. You intended to ring them, or you intended to do something, but you never did. So they judge you by the fact that you didn't do it. You judge yourself by the fact that you intended to. So I think
Yes.
that's really important. So it's like, if you want something to be measured, you actually have to do it.
Yes. 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 The intention is in your head, but
Mm.
the behavior is the thing that's
Yeah,
going to be noticed in the world, isn't it?
it is. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So fast forwarding it to now, and so what's the sort of for you now in that sort of as a coach? What are you trying to bring to sort of people as a coach?
I coach people with the idea that we should all be our own best friend.
Love
And
it.
when I say that, I don't mean somebody who lets you away with everything, or that. I mean somebody who holds you accountable and who's kind to you when you need kindness, and who's empathetic for how you are. So, you know, and it's back to how other people see you. I think if you are saying, you know, I'm a kind person, I work and operate from kindness. But if you say things like, you stand in front of a mirror and you say, oh my God, look at the state of me, you know, then you're not offering yourself a kindness. And that is seen by people around you. So something doesn't measure up.
Yeah.
So you have to be what you have to live to your values, really, I think
Hmm.
is what it brings you to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really I've not heard it in that way before, in a sense of to be your own best friend, but in that particular and said in that sort of succinct way, because
Yeah.
that it's that thing of the other way people say is like, well, if you wouldn't say it to another
Mm-hmm.
person, why would you say it to yourself? In a sense of those
Yeah.
negative sort of phrases and things that you just said, one of the examples there. And it is an interesting one because so much of do you find that then with the people you work with, it is very much working in a sense of with the when you're working with an individual about themselves, their own sort of, is it their own self-awareness, their own
Mm-hmm.
self-talk, those sorts of things you're working with them through?
Yeah, I think so. And like one of the things I have is my book that I wrote, which is called
Oh yeah.
The Right Shoes. And what I use the idea of the right shoes because if you talk about why people have picked their shoes for the day, we've normally picked our shoes for some kind of reason. So it allows you to start looking at your thinking for how you support yourself in the day. And then to say, if you were to pick your shoes with intention each day, it looks at how you're looking to show up in your day. So what it does is it creates a fun, kind of humorous framework to start looking at how you show up in the world. Whereas
Love
if
it.
I say to you, like, how did you show up in your day today?
Yes.
That's such a big question. But if I
Yeah,
say to
yeah.
you, why did you pick the shoes you have on you for today?
Interesting.
That's a much easier conversation and a much more fun conversation to have.
Yes.
But yet,
Interesting.
the end goal is the same.
Yes. Very
It's a
interesting.
segue into more meaningful stuff.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. So, no, yeah, because that's a great sort of move into that in relation to the book. So that's obviously that was the sort of the crux of it. How is it? Is there a
Yeah.
does it follow a sort of a process or a story within the book? Is there a narrative as such to it?
Well, it's a book. I mean, you can dip in and dip out of it.
Yep.
So it's a book that you can pick up and you can read a chapter here and there.
Yep.
And different bits of it will tell you different stories. And the funny thing that I didn't realize is that I've taken pictures of shoes for years. And that was one of
Okay.
the things I realized. But it started from when one of my sons, my middle son, was very sick and he was in Crumlin Hospital. And as part of training in UCD, we had to do a project. And the project was using your creativity to look at how you develop that in your work. So we were all left at the end of the week when we did our first module on creativity to go for a walk around the campus in UCD and figure that out. And that was when, usually when I'd be out walking, I'd look at my surround or I'd look inside my head what was going on. But
Hmm.
this day I found myself very conscious of my shoes and how I was moving around the campus and how quiet my shoes were, the sounds they made on the grass, and then the sounds they made up on the tarmac. And then I started to hear the shoes around me. And it reminded me of when my son was sick in Crumlin. And I used to wear shoes that didn't make any noise when I was in Crumlin because it made me feel like we weren't really there. We never fully landed because it was a place we didn't want to be.
Yeah.
So it brought an invisibility.
Wow.
So then I started thinking about, like if you wear a pair of noisy shoes, how you show up and you feel absolutely there, you know.
Yes.
So it's like how to use those stories around shoes,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
actually figure out who you are.
It's a really interesting the way you just the sense of the silence of them and what that meant
Yeah,
versus it. And then at the same time, you could probably hear where you were in that, especially inside like a hospital, the a person's like if they got like a proper heel on them or something, you'd hear that
yeah,
click clacking, and it almost immediately it makes you think of are they important? That was my
yeah,
first thought came into it,
exactly.
and when you said that, then it's like it reminded me like because people may have listened to the show for heard bits and pieces that I grew up on a military base
Yeah,
in Germany. So it immediately took, when you said about shoes and the sense of the noise, it immediately took me back there, like me
yeah,
going to school and just seeing lads on parade marching and stuff,
yeah,
and that sort of noise of the boots or the shoes, depending on what they were doing. As if like it was,
yeah,
if they're in fatigue, it's like kind of a boot. It was like it's very sort of, it's obviously it's military, but very sort of workman like for soldiers. And then if they're on parade, you'd hear like the dress shoes. It's a
yeah,
very different sort of sound for the different what they were doing. Does that
yeah.
make sense?
It does.
So very interesting. It's a great analogy, and I can see how you brought that in too. So those are the sort of the background for you. So then if you're the reader, is there one of that you could share one of the sort of ideas or from the book that what it sort of how it helps someone?
Well, I think it's if you start to think about how you show up in different places.
Yeah.
So if you start to look at, like, since I've written my book, different people who've read it have sent me photographs of their shoe collection.
Right.
Yeah, or different shoes that they have, or told me stories about different shoes and why they bought them. And, so it's opened up so much in terms of stories that people tell. That
Interesting.
it's been such a lovely segue into so many different conversations that people are prepared to have about themselves, which are about themselves, but about their shoes, which is something just kind of slightly outside of themselves that sometimes makes the conversation easier to have.
It's I can see it now because I'm there literally thinking, this is an interesting one. But notice myself is like, it's not like I don't necessarily have a massive amount of shoes, but one of the things I do notice for myself, even with the pair of runners I'm wearing now, is like I literally wear them into the ground until there's nothing left almost. It's one of those things where it's like it's almost like I get literally every foot out of them. And it's one of those things where it's like the absolute use. It's like it's what in a sense of deep for me is like it's the one of the other things that's funny is like I'll almost buy the same. I've done actually literally gone and bought the same pair of shoes before in a sense of pair of runners. When I've worn one to the ground, I'll go back, they still got the same ones, and bought the exact same pair again.
Yeah.
Or I'll buy it in a slightly different color. That's my own. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's that sort of, maybe it's a little bit of, I know those ones worked before, but it's a little bit different. It's a familiarity versus and that as well. But
that's funny because I had that conversation with my husband because he said, it doesn't really apply to me. I've bought the same pair of shoes for the last 20 years. And I said, but actually have you? Because the shoes that you just bought recently and the shoes you bought 20 years ago, there's been a tiny incremental change from the people who've made them over those 20 years. So actually the shoes you have now and the shoes you bought 20 years ago are actually completely different.
Yeah.
So the incremental changes have popped in without you fully realizing.
Yes.
And he went, actually, you're right. So it's just, but it's the stories and the narratives that we tell around those shoes. And even the idea of bare feet.
Yes.
Bare feet, what do they mean? That for some people that means freedom.
Yes.
It means walking the land, connecting to the land, connecting to
grounding.
Who you are. It's grounding. For other people, it's poverty. So the stories are so wide. And that's where the curious piece comes in. It's what stories are you telling about your shoes?
Yes. And as you say though, it's a really interesting way of getting someone to open up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because they think they're just talking about their shoes. Yeah. I would wonder as well, do people almost like if you break that up, do they kind of give that sort of puppy dog look initially, going, why is she asking me about shoes? You know what I mean?
Well, you see, not really, because it's kind of fun in a conversation.
Sure.
To talk about these different things, to look at, what is it that works for people? What is it that just helps them to kind of figure out who they are? But I played with it when I was because initially the book started off as my end of year college project. So that was when I was really playing with it. And I was able to step into a lift, and anybody can do this, and see somebody who had an unusual pair of shoes and say to them, I love your shoes. And the
Yes.
next thing you get a story, oh, well, I got these and my partner bought them for me, or, you know, a big story about, or I bought them. So they tell you the intention that they bought the shoes with. So if we
Yes.
buy shoes with intention, we can actually be more intentional in our lives by wearing them with intention.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I know I love I'm literally thinking of all the different um shoes and things, and I'm even thinking now, it's like, um so I run, so my sort of
Mm-hmm.
endurance sports and stuff, and even I'm thinking of the various different types of running shoes I've worn,
Yeah.
and at different points throughout my sort of running life over the last 10 years, and how I've chopped and changed with the styles and things, and he's saying it's that intentional piece, and whether you're drawn to the practical, there's, I'm already thinking now, it's like, oh, someone goes very practical, in a
Yeah.
sense of what does that mean, or someone's very more some flamboyant in a sense of what they, in a sense of reflection of themselves, or like you said, are you doing it to try and keep yourself quiet or invisible, not unnoticeable,
Mm-hmm.
versus putting yourself out there, or I'm thinking of the running as like, oh no, is it more, am I following the brand, or actually no, is it because I actually want to get
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the run, so it's an interesting way of one, creating the conversation, but then, as you say, that word back of intention to people.
Yeah. But I think what it ultimately does is it helps people find a way of having a conversation with themselves.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So,
So
yeah.
go on.
No, I was going to say, because it's going to take that further. So what is the sort of, then, with that conversation with themselves, it's like, what's then I suppose the hope for that to come out of that then?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're having a conversation with yourself, I think it's looking at listening. Listening as being
Mm,
something important. When I ask you, if I ask you, who do you listen to most?
mm.
Like
Who
who
do
do
I
you listen? Who do you listen to most?
who do I listen to most? Um, Probably myself.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
are the only person who has heard every single word you
yeah,
have ever said, every
yes,
thought that you've ever had. So if you can be kind and
yes,
considerate and empathetic to yourself, you always have somebody kind with you.
yes,
And that changes things.
yes, hugely.
When you say, I deserve to have somebody kind with me.
Yes, yeah, no, because you might think it, to that question, it's almost like, if you, because you take a second to think, no, it is myself, because
Mm,
sometimes you might immediately think, oh, it's going to be my partner or my parent or my
yeah,
friend, and it's like, and maybe it's that thing of like, if that is the answer, maybe, is it your, because you don't want to listen to yourself, because the things you're saying to yourself are negative,
mm,
so it's kind of shutting it off,
yeah,
versus you're not hearing the things that you want to hear from yourself,
yeah,
and that's where it comes into sense of changing that
yeah,
intention, isn't it?
yeah,
Because ultimately, you say, it's at some point you will just be with yourself.
yeah. And I don't think we can change. I don't say to people, change what you're saying to yourself. I'd
Mm,
say, be more mindful of it. And when you
mm,
say something, then say, would I say that out loud to
mm.
somebody I care about?
Yeah,
And if the answer to that is no, then change what you've said. We can
mm,
take it back. We can
yeah,
do that. I mean, if you say something and you go, I didn't mean to say that, you can take it back and say something different. So
yeah,
replace it. Just add to it. And then I think it becomes a habit to notice the things we say to ourselves and how we're getting in our own way
yeah.
by the things we say to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a particular type of person that you work with as such in the coaching world?
Well, I've been in lots of different areas, looking at lots of different places of work. So I don't have a particular person, but just different people tend to kind of gravitate towards what I do and liking what I do. So, I mean, I just think when we're all fellow humans, so it's
Yeah.
what is it that can be useful for people. But like as I'm sure you would do yourself, if anybody is attracted to the way that I work and what I do, that if they can always have a call with me to say, is this actually something that would be
Yeah.
useful for me? So that's
Yeah.
always really important as well. And sometimes people would say to me, no, I don't need to do that. I'd always say it is important that we do that, especially if there are people that might be in my life or in my vicinity in other
Mm.
roles. To
Yeah.
step in like this is something different. So we need to
Mm.
have that. Am I a good fit for
Mm.
helping you get to where you want to go?
Mm. No, I no, I love that because it's actually it's a bit refreshing in the sense of, because I think if you flipping away from the coaching perspective and going into sort of like purely, if we think it from a business lens or a
Yeah,
that sort of marketing perspective, is the whole thing of find your niche, find your ideal client, your
yeah,
avatar, and all these sorts of things, and that
yeah.
and I have a bit of that, and I don't agree with that, but it's also that an element of, I'm interested in your perspective on this, is like that whole thing of presenting yourself to the world as who you are and
Yeah,
the way you see certain things, the perspective you have on whether it be coaching, well-being, helping people, and then they will find you. So is
yeah.
that versus, oh no, I'm going to, because some people are very, very intentional. It's like in specific, no,
Hmm.
I want to help women, or I want to help men, or I want to help young people. Is it something that you were kind of like, I'm just going to ignore that, or just going to just feel my way through this?
Well, I different times I look at different groups and think
Yeah.
I have something to offer
Interesting.
this
Yeah.
group. Like I suppose at the moment one of the things that I'm looking at is the young adult group that are, and it's funny because it kind of correlates with sometimes what's happening in my own life,
Sure.
looking at young people who are moving from school or college into the workplace, and there
Mm.
are new skills that are needed to help
Mm.
move from one space into the other because roles are
Yeah.
changing. So it's
Yep.
those transition pieces that
Mm.
sometimes that coaching can actually help you
Yeah.
figure out how you want to show up in that space and
Yeah.
what are the skills that you might need to be the
Yeah.
best version of yourself in the new
Love that.
space.
Interesting. That is a very, I'm sure, very interesting transition to be
Yeah,
working, because work is changing so
it
rapidly,
is.
the world of work, and whatever the next sort of generation coming out of colleges and universities
Yeah.
and schooling. So what do you think, not obviously going into any specifics of people, is there some broad challenges that sort of group of people are finding, would you think?
Well, I think we're talking about a young group of young people that there was a time when young people, like when I moved into work, I also moved out of home.
Yep.
So all those things kind of came together, which push you into,
Mm.
kind of a different headspace and a different way of showing up for yourself. But a lot of young people now in Ireland are actually at home and still at
Mm.
home, but moving into the workplace. So parents are playing a more parenting role in some respects than they would have done when young people
Yeah.
moved out. So it's
Yes.
how to manage that as
Mm.
well so that they become as independent as they can be. And yet they need to be interdependent for work and life to work well. So it's
Yeah.
creating good, healthy boundaries
Yeah.
around how they show up in the different spaces. I think that's
Mm.
a big challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, you think about it, because it's going into any sort of work environment where, because it is a transition, moving away from the responsibility
Yeah,
of college in a sense of getting in assignments or doing the work, doing, qualification, whatever it is. It's that sort of, but it's still that sort of student teacher,
yeah,
faculty pupil. It's still that sort of relationship. once you go into the workplace, it's contractual, it's
Yeah.
professional, it's boss, it's subordinate, it's whatever,
Yeah.
it's employee. And there's a lot of times when even entry level as such, there's a lot of responsibility on any person who goes into the
Yeah.
workplace. But you still, as you say, potentially they still got that dynamic of home, of parent child,
Yeah.
are more than likely still in the same bedroom that you essentially
Yeah.
grew up in.
Hmm.
All of that family history, that must be, say, a very challenging for everyone, maybe in the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, yeah. Because again, it's, and I'm probably, I don't know, from one of the last, because it's like when I went to university, that's when I considered I essentially left home.
Mm.
Because I think there was only once when I graduated. I went home for 6 7 months, saved some money, travelled, did a
Yeah.
sort of round the world bit of travelling, came back again 6 months. Was there in my now wife's at the time girlfriend's house. That's when I moved over to Ireland,
Mm.
and then we found a place to rent.
Yeah.
We were that lucky in the sense of, so we were only what 22, 23 when we were able to find ourselves a place that we could rent in Dublin back then.
Yeah.
And it's I can't imagine, and if how hard it would be to just still be in that environment
Yeah.
when you're essentially trying to grow up
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
So
It's a big challenge, and I think it's something that needs some time and attention
mm,
um, to help people manage that space.
yeah, because there's definitely some sense of management, because from your perspective, you can't unfortunately go, well, here's a load of money so you can move out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's because we know the sort of the financial or the housing constraints that unfortunately
Yeah.
the young people are facing. So it is very much an area where you, especially if they had a positive relationship
Yeah.
with parents,
Mm.
it's like you don't want to effectively ruin relationships because of extended period of potential stay from both sides.
Yeah.
Which they, it's yeah, I can imagine it's a growing
Yeah.
there's plenty of people in that space who are looking for some
Yeah.
assistance.
So it's about, again, creating dialogue, isn't it? About
Yes, yeah,
creating good boundaries, about creating intention, about creating
yes,
space for all of those things.
yeah, interesting. So that's obviously one. I like the way you say it's almost seeing what comes up at any given moment in sense of where
Mm.
you'll work with
Yeah.
people. Um, any other sort of things you have in the moment that, in relation to what you do in the coaching space at the moment?
I think that's the main thing. Now, I'd work with clients individually as well. I've worked with clients in groups. So it just depends on what's the fit and
Yeah.
what's needed. So sometimes it's needed in a space, like a youth group space, or sometimes it's needed in, like, I've worked in kind of with older groups and spaces as well. And the funny thing is that I did think about moving away from working with youth, but then I was working with one person and he said to me, why did I have to be 44 before I knew this?
Yeah.
And that made me think it's so important to stay in that young adult space,
Yeah.
um, to actually create the conversations in that space. And it is about creating conversations. It's not really
Yes.
about teaching, but it's
No.
about exploring these conversations around these teachable skills so
Mm.
that people can integrate them. If you just tell somebody how to do something, and they might know how to do it, but they don't take ownership of it. So it's the conversation and the real dialogue that actually helps create the thinking around, how do I want to be intentional in my life?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
I
useful
think.
piece.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's since I did my sort of qualifications a few years ago. I think that it's more and more so in that sort of the coaching sort of space is constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly
Mm-hmm.
moving. But it's definitely shifted in thinking even the few years since I got into it myself, and it needs to continue to shift. That it's not just this thing that you do to get better in your career. It's
Yeah.
not just something that's an exec thing or a management thing or a corporate thing or anything. It's a people thing. It's a
Yeah.
human thing. It's about, like you said earlier, when you were referring to sort of the residential work you did, and then it more so it's like, I think that scaffolding is a really powerful analogy as well, in
Yeah.
a sense of it's just there at different moments, at different
Yeah.
points in life, and it's so there's no reason why a 20 something wouldn't get the benefit from it. It's,
Yeah.
as you say, as opposed to waiting till they're 30 or 40 or whatever age it is. So
Yeah.
no, it's a definite group that obviously will needs it and is benefiting from it anyway.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Um, I love to ask people as well, obviously, like yourself, who've been on where you had the 30-year sort of career in
Mm.
residential. How does it feel like to try and do something for yourself?
That was a big one for me because
Yeah.
I would have always had a very busy work environment. And my busy work environment would have been my staff team and then the kids that
Yep.
lived in the centre. And then just before I medically retired, I would have worked in a centre which would have had a lot of kids, a lot of staff, a very busy environment all day. And
Mm.
suddenly I'm at home working from my cabin or my dining room when I started off, just me.
Mm.
So it was how did I develop a network of
Yeah.
people, because we learn from each other
Yeah.
and to create, and we're also challenged by each other. So how to create that space where I'm challenged, where my learning is increased. So it would have been then staying in it. I'm always in some kind of training program, which I love.
Okay.
And there's
Yes.
so much opportunity to continue to grow in that space as well. And again, I think it's the nosy thing, the curiosity
Yeah.
piece that keeps me
Yes.
in there as well. So there's always something new to learn. There's always something new to grow, to add into the mix. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is really important when you move into that working for yourself space.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100. I know. 100% echo that, and I think that was definitely an element. I think because I was still my transition to working my own. I think I was in sort of still in work in the sort of when the first lockdowns and stuff.
Yeah,
So I went from the busy, mad office sort of environment where I was always in like customer service roles in my previous roles
yeah,
in financial services. So generally lots of noise, lots of people, lots of talking, lots of movement and stuff. And then suddenly it was at home with, as you say, no one else around, and almost
yeah,
silence. It was very, so at first it was that kind of like, oh my God, this is actually quite nice, in the sense of like
yeah,
that almost, but then, yeah, you kind of have to sort of, you could find yourself just plowing your own sort of furrow type thing and doing
yeah.
it on your own. But yeah, that element of connectivity
Mm-hmm.
is hugely important, and I think it's definitely one of the reasons why I do this. It's that connection, networking, curiosity thing as well. It's
Yeah.
it's the learning from others. You can't do enough of it. Um, Lucy, there's some questions I always like to ask every guest. You
Mm-hmm.
already shared one with us, so hopefully you have another one. Any other quotes or phrases that are important to you?
Yes, I have one on the wall behind me, but if I
Yeah.
go messing around with the camera now, I might get that
Right.
fixed. But it's, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? And it's
Wow.
from Mary Oliver's The Summer Day, the poem The Summer Day. And I
Yes.
think that's the question that I think it's so important to ask people, because you have a choice what you do with your life. So
Yeah.
it's about making the choices. And sometimes they're little choices which build to something bigger, whereas sometimes we think we have to make a big leap.
Hmm.
But it's sometimes the little things. It's the little things that you do every day, something new and little that you do every day with
Yeah.
intention, that actually can bring you something big. So it's,
Yeah.
what will you do with your one wild and precious life? I think is something that's so important. And that
Yeah.
was given to me by a fellow coach.
Yes.
And she sent it to me, so I framed it and put it up on the wall. So that's
Love it.
a really
Yeah.
precious question.
Yeah, no, I love that one. That's fabulous. And who do you think have been the biggest influences in your life?
Um, I think my mother would have been a huge influence in my life as
Yeah.
a young child. And I know I lost her very early, but she left me with a sense of worthiness. And that has carried me through lots of difficult times. So I think sometimes we think that if we're only a short term or short time in a person's life, that we don't make that much difference. But actually, we can, and how we are
Mm,
and what we do, ensuring that somebody knows we love them, that we
mm,
care about them, that we see them, that even for all their flaws and faults, that we still love them. I think that's really important. I have an uncle who I feel is one of those scaffolds for people. So he's somebody that I would go to for advice, but I don't always go to him for advice, but I know he's there if I need advice. And there's something really big in that too. And
mm.
he's also somebody who at different times in my life would have said things that scaffolded me through very difficult times just by seeing the struggle that I had. So I
Mm.
think they would have been very big influences
Yeah,
in my life.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think yeah, no, thank you for sharing that because I think that the word that really that hit me there when you said it was the feeling worthy, the
Mm,
worthiness of like that's such a powerful thing for any person
yeah,
to get from anyone. So even as young as you were when your mother passed, to pull that through from even just a short that time, it's
yeah,
such a wonderful thing to have. I think that is such a that because it feeds in obviously to things like self-esteem and self-belief and confidence, but that sort of
yeah,
feeling worthy is a such a powerful emotion, and I think it kind of then reflects on what you've done as well and how you're
yeah,
trying to sort of, and I think this is not teach people to build it in other people. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? That feeling of self-worth is it's such a powerful thing. um Lucy, it's been wonderful to chat to you. I've loved learning so much from you, especially about the shoes. I'm going to be going for a walk in a minute. That's all I'm going to be thinking about, which is fantastic. I do have one more question for you though, which is
Yeah.
what's important for your future?
I think to continue building on the work that I'm
Mm,
doing and to continue learning and to continue
mm,
engaging with other people and hearing how they narrate their stories
mm.
to
Yeah.
help them sometimes change the narration of their stories.
Yeah, 100%. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for chatting to me, Lucy. I want to make sure that people will continue to follow, connect, and support you. So we will put any links in the show notes. But if you would like to give a shout out of where people can follow you online.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me. I have a website which is lucycronlycoaching.com. You can contact me there as well. So they're the two
Lovely.
best places to get me.
Brilliant stuff. As I say, the links are going to be in the show notes, everyone. So please make sure you connect and follow and check out Lucy's website. Lucy, thank you again so much for chatting to me.
That's been great. I've really enjoyed it too.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.